Hello and welcome to IELTS Speaking course, lesson number 5, Grammar for Speaking. Hello and welcome. My name is Jonathan. Today's lesson number 4 is Grammar for Speaking. Let's get started. Here are the learning outcomes for today. So by the end of this lesson, you will be able to identify and apply complex sentence structures. You're going to recognize these structures. You're going to include relative clauses, conditional sentences, use the passive voice. So all of this you'll be learning by the end of today's lesson. There's a lot to do. If grammar is not your favorite thing, you won't enjoy this lesson as much, but it's important. We have to learn it and it'll be crucial for your IELTS speaking test. Not only that, we'll also be looking at using verb tenses, modals, and of course we want to avoid the most common grammatical errors. I will give you a list by the end of today's lesson. Task 1. Is grammar letting you down? As always, we begin with a warm-up task. Every task that I give you, I always want to allocate maybe 5 to 10 minutes. And I do want you to do them. Either write them in the answers in your notepad or just speak to the screen, record yourself. Whatever you're doing, as long as it's improving the interactivity of yourself throughout this course. Have a look at questions number 1 and number 2 and give yourself some minutes to respond to those questions. Once you have finished, please return back to the video. So, what are the common errors you've noticed in your English speaking? Are you aware of them? How do we improve them? And also, what aspects of grammar do you find the most challenging? Be interesting to hear your responses. In the live lesson, this will be the points where we would all discuss what we are struggling with. As you are taking this lesson by yourself, just keep your answers to yourself. And of course, you'll look back at it at the end of the lesson and see if today's lesson will help you improve the things that you're struggling with at the moment. So many students ask me how to improve grammar. Well, I'm going to break grammar into 5 chunks today. Verb tenses, conditional sentences, modal verbs, sentence structure, and common errors. On your screen now are the key definitions. Take notes if you're not sure of what they mean, but I will explain them one by one as we go throughout this lesson. Let's begin with verb tenses. What are they? Well, they indicate the timing of an action in relation to the present, past, or future. For example, present tense would be something like, I study English every day. The past tense would be, she visited London last summer. And the future tense would be, they will travel to Paris next month. Of course, we want to provide clarity and precision when we use these tenses. It allows the listeners to understand the timing of our actions. And of course, using different types of verb tenses in your IELTS speaking will improve your grammar score, it will improve your fluency and coherency score, so you will get a higher score overall. Here are some example sentences of some tenses I want to teach you. Past perfect and past perfect continuous. What is the past perfect? Now, I'll try to explain this in the simplest of ways, but do rewind the video if there is anything you do not understand. I will try to instruct you step by step. But people taking this course probably have some understanding of this, but not fully sure. If you do want lessons, for a beginner or lower intermediate, please do reach out to me. So the past perfect tense, had plus past participle. Past participle is also known as the third verb. For example, in a regular verb, the third verb is the same as the second verb. Walk, walked, walked. But there are many irregular verbs where the third verb is of course different. Eat, ate, third verb, eaten. That's the verb that we're using when we use the past perfect tense, past perfect. Continuous is a little bit different. I'll talk about that in a moment. But let's have a look at an example of past perfect tense. She had finished her homework before watching TV, and by the time I arrived, they had already left. So why are we using this tense? Well, the past perfect tense is used to describe an action that was completed before another action or point in the past. Let me just turn on my camera quickly. So when we talk about the past tense, when we have a point in time, what happens before that point in time? You would use the past perfect. For example, she had finished her homework before watching TV. The point in time, watching TV. Before she watched TV, had finished her homework. Remember that point in time. Now, for the past perfect continuous, we would use had been and then the verb in the ing. For example, had been studying, or by the time they reached the hotel, they had been driving for over 5 hours. So when we use the past perfect continuous tense, it's an action that was ongoing and had a duration before another action or point in the past. So if I was to put on my camera again, he had been studying for hours before taking a break. Taking a break, but before that, had been studying. But this time it's different because it is a continuous action. It was happening a lot of the time. So some verbs we tend to use more as a continuous action. It's important to note that. And also we put a duration on there as well, and we explain this by saying how many days or hours or months. For example, they had been driving for over 5 hours. Present perfect and present perfect continuous is the same, almost the same, but that point in time is not a past point, but the point is right now. She has visited Paris many times. They have never eaten sushi. There isn't this past point that we're referring to. We're just talking about right now. In terms of the words, you've noticed the one thing that we change, it's no longer had, but it is now have or has. I have, you have, they have, we have, but of course, he has, she has, it has. The present perfect continuous is the same as well. We just change that had to have has. And once again, we're talking about something that is started in the past, have been ongoing, and continue into the present. He has been studying for 3 hours right now. But of course, that occurred during the past as well, but it's still relevant right now. It's not a completed action. And once again, the future perfect and the future perfect continuous is very close, but it is a little bit different to the previous two. The future perfect consists of will plus have plus past participle. It is used to describe actions that will be completed before a specified point or action in the future. Okay, so once again, if I turn on my camera, we have a point in the future. If you look at the first example, by the time you arrive, that is the point in the future. And then we're talking about an action that will be completed before that point. So by the time you arrive, that is the point. We don't know when that is. We don't care when that is. It could be next week, could be tomorrow, it could be in 5 minutes. But it is the future and is a point in the future. I will have finished my homework. The future perfect continuous will have been and then the verb ing again. Same format, same structure as the one before. By the time the concert starts, the band will have been rehearsing for hours. Once again, we stress that continuous action. It emphasizes the continuous nature and duration of the action leading up to that point. Once again, we have that point in the future by the time the concert starts, by tomorrow morning. Will have been verb ing. I know I have explained it relatively quickly, but hopefully you've learned from those last 3 slides, or you've remembered how to use those perfect tenses. And now I want you to put your knowledge to the test. Can you answer these 5 questions? Remember, you can use the past, present, or future tense. Good luck with those 5 questions. Once you have written down your answers, please come back to the video. Welcome back. How did you do with task number 2? Let's go through a few examples now. Number 1. By this time next week, I blank complete my assignment. Now straight away, you're probably thinking future tense. And if you're thinking that, you are correct, because we have a point in the future. By this time next week. You can obviously choose continuous or not, but if we look at the verb, it is not a verb that we use in the continuous tense. So, future perfect, it would be I will have completed, third verb of complete, my assignment. By this time next week, I will have completed my assignment. Number 2. Let's try number 2. They blank study for the exam for 3 hours now. Okay? It sounds like it's the present tense. Because we have the word now, that's a big clue. They have, present tense, and study, are we going to go for the continuous tense? Well, we have a duration of time here, 3 hours. It's a big clue. I think we should have the continuous tense. They have been studying for the exam for 3 hours now. Okay? If you got those 2 correct, well done. I will reveal the answers to the other ones at a later time. But hopefully you have applied the 3 previous slides' knowledge to get these answers correct. Well done. Now, let's discuss conditional sentences. Conditional sentences express situations or hypothetical scenarios. Hypothetical, very important word when describing conditional. They're not real scenarios. They're just possibilities of things that could happen or things in the past that could have happened, but not necessarily they did. They involve a cause and effect relationship. They consist of 2 clauses, the if clause, which is the conditional clause, and the main clause. We have 4 conditionals: 0 conditional, first conditional, second conditional, and third conditional. 0 and first are easier to understand, but second and third can get a little bit difficult. Let's have a look at some examples here of a 0 conditional. If you heat water to 100 degrees Celsius, it boils. The verb is in the present tense. The verb is in the present tense. And you're saying something which is true. It cannot really be argued. And yeah, there's no sort of chance to it. It might not, you're not going to say that it might boil or may boil. You're saying it will boil because it's scientific, it's factual. This is where the first conditional is a little bit different. It's almost the same as 0 conditional, but there is an element of chance to it. If it rains, we will stay indoors. This is an example of the first conditional. We will stay indoors. Once again, we have the verb here, stay, in the present tense. Rains in the present tense. Now, will could be replaced by any other type of modal verb. Now, modal verb are words like could or can, might, may, will. If it rains, we might stay indoors. So there's an element of possibility. We might do it. It's not 100%. 0 conditional, it's more certain. First conditional, there are things that are left to chance. The second conditional, here we have the past tense of the verb, and then we have would, present tense of the verb. So the second conditional, we are talking about situations that, if they did happen, this is what would happen. But they're not real, they are hypothetical. And these scenarios are almost impossible, or they are impossible. Okay, they're very, very unlikely. If I won the lottery, incredibly unlikely. But if it did happen, I would buy a new car. Third conditional, you'll notice that we have the word had studied. So think of that past perfect knowledge you just learned. And then in the second main clause, we would have would have passed. So we have would, present tense, have, past, which is the present perfect tense. So if he had studied harder, the third conditional, we're talking about a different scenario happening that actually did. So by the sounds of it, if someone said if he had studied harder, the reality is the person didn't study very well in real life. So we're saying the opposite of what actually happened. If he had studied harder, he would have passed the exam. If someone tells you this, most likely the person didn't pass their exam because they didn't study hard. But we're saying it in a hypothetical way as if it did happen. So why would we use this? Well, of course, if you show conditional sentences in your IELTS exam, that's going to help you, for sure. Because you are going to talk about hypothetical situations at times, in part 2 and in part 3 in particular. When you're doing a bit of storytelling in part 2, conditional sentences will definitely help you. So let's learn advanced conditionals. So most students getting a 5 to 6 score are capable of using that 0 and first conditional, but they don't use the second and third as much. So let's have a look at some examples of those. You already saw a few in the previous slide, but let's have a look at some more. And please write down notes of this. Write them down and remember how to use the second conditional and third conditional. So the second conditional is used to express hypothetical or unreal situations in the present or in the future. And the third conditional is used to talk about hypothetical situations in the past. It describes what would have happened if a different past event had occurred. Look at the examples, look at the grammar construct of those examples. If I won the lottery, I would buy a new car. If she had more time, she could visit her friend. Third conditional, if he had studied harder, he might have passed the exam. If they had arrived on time, they would have seen the concert. Okay, let's put your knowledge to the test again. Second and third conditionals. Here are 5 situations on your screen now. I would like you to finish off those sentences using a second or third conditional. I will give you an example for number 1 before you do questions 2, 3, 4 and 5. The situation for number 1. You missed the last bus to the city centre. If you had left earlier, how would we finish this sentence? If you had left earlier, you wouldn't have missed the last bus. You wouldn't have missed the last bus. Let's see how you do with 2, 3, 4 and 5. Once you have finished, please come back to the video. So how did you do? Was this easy or not so easy? If you have all the notes next to you, it would certainly make it a lot easier. If you're trying to do it without the notes, well done. I admire your bravery. So all the answers will be revealed on the answer key. This will be instructed to you at a later point, but well done on the second and third conditionals. Modal verbs. Now, of course, modal verbs are something we already talked about just a few moments ago when discussing conditionals. Modal verbs are auxiliary verbs, helping verbs as we call them, and they express various degrees of possibility, necessity, ability, permission or obligation. Let me give you some examples. I can speak English fluently. Can is the modal verb. You must submit your assignment by Friday. Must is the modal verb. May I borrow your pen, please? Would you like some coffee? These are different examples of modal verbs. They help us convey degrees of certainty, and that's why we use them. We also use them for politeness or obligation in communication. It is important that we add modal verbs to the way that we speak to express certainty or uncertainty. So if you can add them to your IELTS answers, fantastic. Sentence structure. What does it mean when I talk about sentence structure? Well, sentence structure refers to the way words and phrases are organized, so they can form a coherent and grammatically correct sentence. A simple sentence, she sings beautifully. No problem with that, but if we want higher scores, we probably want to use a complex sentence. Although it was raining, they decided to go for a walk. Okay, so we have two clauses within this sentence. In a compound sentence, she loves to read and he enjoys playing music. As you see, we have a word there, a transition word, that helps you link the 2 points that you're making. We talked about this before in the fluency and coherency, and of course this is what we're alluding to when we say sentence structure. So I've put these together, modal verbs and sentence structure. Please take note of everything you see on your screen now. What is a simple sentence structure? What is a complex sentence structure? And what is a compound sentence structure? There are maybe some terms on your screen that I will help explain to you now. So subject, modal verb, main verb, complement. Okay, I can spend hours. Hours in this case would be the complement. So it is related to the verb that you're using. What are you spending? Probably spending money or you're spending time. So let's have a look at an example IELTS answer for a simple sentence. Certainly, my favorite hobby is painting. I can spend hours creating colorful artworks that bring me joy and relaxation. Here are a couple of simple sentences put together. Nothing wrong with that, but we don't want to do it all the time when we are answering questions for IELTS. A complex sentence would have a subordinating clause. Now, subordinating clause, what is that? Okay, let's have a look at the example answer again. Yes, I strongly believe that children should be taught early about environmental conservation. When they understand the importance of preserving nature, they can make informed decisions for a sustainable future. So the subordinating clause and the main clause, they are added together to make a complex sentence. Compound sentence. Structure, independent clause and coordinating conjunction plus independent clause. This would be a compound sentence. I appreciate both forms of entertainment. I love watching movies because they provide visual storytelling, and I can also get lost in books for hours, allowing my imagination to roam. I don't want to go into too much detail on this slide. It's harder to explain and will take a bit more time, but just have a look at how the sentences are structured. And of course, I can provide individual lessons on this type of grammar. But as long as you know enough and you know what they are, you can try to incorporate this in your IELTS answers. Here are examples of 3 different ones: the simple sentence, the complex sentence, and the compound sentence. As you see, there are words here which are in bold. Apologies, may should be in bold, and must should also be in bold. They are the modal verbs in the simple sentence, and they're just one simple sentence. In complex sentence, you see that there are more than one point made, and in compound sentence, you'll see they are using these connectors, these conjunctions, but, or, so. Have a look at all of them, see how they are different, and see how do you speak? What type of sentences are you using? Can we get more complex sentences, more compound sentences into your answers? Here is task 4. Please look at those 3 questions. Write down or speak your answers to those questions and try to use some modal verbs and try to use some different sentence structures. Remember, simple is okay, but try complex and compound sentences. This is our first bit of practice really, where we're answering an actual IELTS question that may be asked to you in the exam. Good luck with this practice. I will give you some time to do this. Once you have finished, please come back to the video. This is a really good bit of practice. So you're answering 3 questions that would probably be asked in most IELTS questions, very common questions, and you've given your response. But you've looked at it in a different way this time. Yes, you're probably thinking before yesterday's lesson or the previous lesson, we're talking about vocabulary, we're also talking about fluency, But now I just want you to focus on the grammar. Now, did you have compound sentences, complex sentences? Did you have a few modal verbs? If you did, well done. Let's move on to the next part. Grammar mistakes, grammar mistakes, grammar mistakes. Now, everyone makes them. Even native speakers make grammar mistakes 10% of their dialogue. Okay, now if you reach 70% in grammar accuracy, then that is a really high standard and you should be happy with yourself. Okay, so this is what it says on your screen now. Don't worry about making mistakes. Everyone is going to make mistakes and it's not going to impact your score too much. As I said in previous lessons, if your grammar is preventing the examiner from understanding you, that's when it becomes more of a problem. However, the fewer mistakes made, the better chances of boosting your score. So if you are thinking of 7, 7.5, 8, then of course we don't want to be making too many grammar mistakes. We want at least 70% accuracy, which is not easy to achieve, but if you can, then obviously you will be happy with your grammar score. So before I show you some of the common errors, here is an answer to a part 2 question. Remember, part 2 question is the longest question of the test. It's about 1 to 2 minutes of speaking. Now, you may read this and think it's absolutely fine, but there are a lot of grammatical mistakes. Can you find them? I'll give you some time to read, see if you can find the small grammar mistakes. Once you finish, come back to the video. Okay, welcome back. Now you probably noticed some mistakes. I'm not going to talk about all the mistakes now, but you can probably see some of the obvious ones. For example, it makes us feel so relaxed. Relax is a verb, but the speaker wants to use an adjective, relaxed. It makes us feel so relaxed. So this is one of the common mistakes that people make, and I'm going to show you the most common mistakes that students make. So get your notepad out, start making some notes, and try to avoid the following mistakes. Number 1, the subject-verb agreement. Yes, so in simple terms, matching singular subjects with plural verbs or the other way round. She have a cat. Okay, so you can say she has a cat, but not she have a cat. Second of all, tense consistency. We talked about tenses today. So here we're talking about the inconsistent use of verb tenses. So mixing present and past tense. Of course you can do that, and there are times where the structure is right for you to do that. But make sure you are mixing it correctly. If you're talking about something that's happening right now, there should be no reason for using the future tense, for example. Article errors. Now, articles are the shortest and simplest words in the English language. However, many people make mistakes with these words. A, an, the. When I learn other languages, Latin languages, French, Spanish, Portuguese, I make a lot of mistakes with the articles as well. So they're not easy, even though there's only 3 of them in the English language. So I am student. What is the mistake? Well, the student is a noun and we need a before it. I am a student. Pluralization. Failing to pluralize nouns when necessary or using plurals incorrectly. Very common mistake. I have 2 dogs is a lot better, well, it's correct, I should say, instead of I have 2 dog, or I've been to many country, or I like watching movie. I hear this all the time. We do need to make sure that if it's plural, that it's plural, that we hear the S on the end of the regular plurals. Word order. Of course, sometimes we have wrong word order. This is more basic level, but it does happen. Pizza you like? Of course, this is how people may speak if they're more intermediate or lower intermediate. But of course, do you like pizza would be the right word order. Pronoun usage. She is nice and I love it. So you're incorrectly using the pronoun. She is nice and I love it. I love, what is it exactly? And sometimes we get confused between she and he. So just make sure that you're using the right pronouns. Prepositions are the most common mistake, prepositions. And to be honest, they are very confusing. Native speakers just know what they are and they learn it from a young age. But when you learn it as an older person and you think about the prepositions, sometimes there's not a lot of logic, sometimes there is logic, but it's easy to forget all of the preposition uses. Very, very difficult. So in, on, at, for, yes, they can be often misused. I'm good at math, I'm good in math. Okay, which one is the correct one? Even now, you're probably thinking, they look good, both of them. Can I use both? Yeah, you can use both. They're understandable, but we want to reduce these mistakes. I'm good at math is the correct one. And there's more mistakes. So double negatives, I don't need no help. This is what native speakers do a lot as well, but try to avoid it. I don't need no help means I need help. So good. Missing or redundant words. So we forget words that are essential in the sentence, and then we also include ones that we don't need. I go to store. Okay, we're missing words like I go to the store. Or I am very much happy. Okay, you could just say I am very happy. We don't need the word much here. In fact, the much is grammatically incorrect. You cannot be much happy. Here's another one of incomplete sentences. My favorite hobby, playing the piano. So you can speak like this in spoken English sometimes, but we probably want a lengthier sentence that makes more sense. It feels like we want more information here. The misuse of modal verbs. Remember, we've just learned what can, could, should, would is. So I can to swim is incorrect. When we talk about ability, then you can say I can swim. Okay, you don't need the word to there. Okay, when it's can, no to, but the other ones, most likely you're going to have a to. Okay, well, you can have a to. You don't necessarily need to have a to. Run-on sentences, joining multiple independent clauses. So I like dogs, they are friendly. Well, we're missing something there. We're missing that conjunction. I like dogs because they are friendly. Superlative errors. That movie was the boringest film I've ever seen. Boringest is not a superlative. We would say the most boring. And confusing verb forms. I enjoy to read instead of I enjoy reading now. This is hard to explain the difference of why we have the to before the verb instead of the verb ing, but there are rules out there, so you can research and find out why we do use this and why we don't use it in other cases. But I have sympathy for all my English learners. I do, because grammar can be a nightmare at times, and it can be very easy to get it all confused. So don't worry too much, but these are the mistakes that are the most common with all the examples that you see. So let's bring it all together for the final task of today. Lots of grammar, lots of listening. You are probably tired of my voice right now. But let's look at a possible part 2 IELTS question, and it's asking you to describe an historical event. Once again, these part 2 questions will ask you where and what and how. So just look at the question, but don't answer it yet. Then I want you to follow 2, 3, 4. So this is basically applying what you learned today. Write down some verb tenses. Write down some perfect tenses that you want to use. Okay, how will you use them? Remember the point in time. Write down some conditional sentences. Include a second conditional. Not easy. I'm not saying this is easy, but try to write a second conditional or a third conditional. Write down 2 more sentences using modal verbs. Try to use a mix of compound and complex sentences. Good luck with all of them. Don't worry about the time limit. Have 5 to 10 minutes on this. Then, once you finish your answer, go to question number 5 and speak or write your answer, and the answer should be between 1 to 2 minutes. Good luck with this. So well done. How was your answer? The main thing you get from this lesson is you're looking at grammar a little bit differently and what is required from the examiner. So can you get compound sentences in? Can you get conditional sentences in? Can you try to avoid those mistakes? Now, if you do, then there's nothing stopping you from getting a good grade within your grammar. Now, you've done vocabulary enrichment you've done fluency enrichment, and now you've boosted your grammar. So well done. Fantastic stuff. Let's have a look at the tips for self-study. Here are some tips for self-study. So between now and your next lesson, what is the best thing you can do with your free time now? And that's to do more online grammar worksheets. You have learned some key ones today, the perfect tenses, the conditionals, but try to practice more and see if you can start using them in your conversations. Check out other online content, review the notes, put into practice what you learned today in terms of grammar. Thank you for today. Well done for listening to all the grammar that I had to share with you, and well done for going through all the tasks. I will see you in lesson number 5. I will see you then. Bye-bye.